Hello, Dad here. It is Sunday, I believe the 9th of June. I've got a couple of hours before church starts. I'm out for a little walk, and one of the things I've been thinking about, and it was driven by a few things I've seen and heard over the last couple of days, was people having what we would call faith crises. Now, my background, by culture and by choice, is that of a Christian faith. And a lot of people that I associate with or read about, hear about, are going through a faith crisis at one point or another. And it's not necessarily a static event. I think it's something that it's a term that we often give to a process of growth and development and awareness, and it kind of intrigues me and makes me sad at the same time, because as a kid I was always fairly precocious. I was one of those who, I love history, and I like history warts and all. So when I read about or talk to someone who discovers that maybe their priest or rabbi or bishop, pastor, whomever, is really just a mortal, and it rocks them. For some reason, there's an expectation of somehow ultra divinity about somebody that is seeking to help others. I'm not even going to get into the political aspects of it, because we've attributed a weird sense of perfectionism to our political demigods anyway, which kind of amazes me. But anyway, back, and a lot of people, when they finally start to dig and want to learn more about, their faith or others, they find out, oh my gosh, maybe they're found out that their founding prophet, was less than perfect. Or in the 7th century, the bearded leader of their faith was a polyamorous pedophile. Or Martin Luther was a raging anti-Semite. Or Moses was guilty at the least of manslaughter and had to flee from his country. So I always caution people, or at least I am now. I'm trying to do this, to my kids, to my family and friends and whoever else might be tuning into this channel. Be careful with how you view these parrots. Hope they don't poop on me. All these things that happen in life. that not everyone, least of all us as mortals, are perfect. We all have flaws. Now, where I do have some issue or issues are not when people try to put their best face forward, but when they try to hide events of the past as if it didn't happen. Like I say, I like the truth, warts and all. And I like history, warts and all. It makes it easier for me. And again, a lot of stuff is good, even though the proponents and the teachers may not be perfect. And you can't, and I'm not talking about Santa Claus and Easter Bunny, but a lot of the things of the spirit can't be solely understood by just the basis of the intellect. Okay, I was going to say intellectualizing, but the intellect. Because it's the presumption that there is a God, and the presumption is that this God not only transcends our mortal existence, but is the creator of our existence and has certain laws in place that we may not understand yet, then we probably should try to do those things that God has asked us to do to understand his nature or his being. And typically that involves a spiritual process of prayer or meditation or both, as we seek to transcend what some refer to this mortal coil and reach for the divine and the sublime. One of the things that I was thinking about also with this, in addition to trying to understand faith, and if you're going through this faith crisis, is to look at the path that we're asked to follow. And right now I happen to be walking in Burbank. Okay, this is Olive Avenue, and right here you see this sidewalk. Okay, hopefully you got to see it. I've got just my mighty Samsung S1.5. But this sidewalk, we have on one side is a street that right now it's not too heavily trafficked. But a lot of times there's a lot of cars, and these are 2, 3, 4,000 pound rolling missiles that could do a lot of damage. And the other side are businesses. Okay, in this case there's a brick wall. So if we want to proceed to our destination, and I will call it heaven, or the celestial kingdom, or exaltation, eternal glory, nirvana, eternal bliss, whatever you want. If I want to get there, I have to follow this path. Okay? Now this path, it's fairly well delineated. There's also it's pretty wide. I can move to the left, I can move to the right. I can do all kinds of things. I could stop. If I'm tired, I can take a break, I can rest. I could walk backwards if I wanted to, or I could turn around entirely and head back the other direction. There's a lot of leeway and latitude that we have on this path. But the path itself is fairly well delineated. Even, if you don't have a Christian worldview, maybe you're seeking to fill your mind with nothingness so you can become one with God by not having any conscious thoughts about it. Or, like me, I'm actively going down this path. I'm purposefully trying to achieve a certain end, and I'm heading that way. And that's the way it is with our faith. We can choose how fast or how slow, how straight, how many detours we want to make on the path to our goal. And maybe there's a roadblock in the way, okay? Let's say I'm walking along and, there's this lamppost. And let's say we'll call this lamppost a bishop who happens to be a jerk. Okay? Do I just stand here and get mad at that lamppost? Do I say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna stop my progress because this bishop is a jerk, or maybe my rabbi's a goofball, or whatever? No. I move out of the way. I do what I need to do to change my circumstances. Maybe ask the lamppost, hey, you might want to consider what you're doing, think about how you're behaving, how it's affecting other people, but I still need to move on. We also have here is this F-104 Starfighter. It's on static display. It's pretty cool, really small wings. I'm always amazed, it's just like a high-powered pencil. But people talk about the freedom of flight. Well, yeah, there is a lot of freedom in flight. Years ago, I had a private pilot's license, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. However, there are a lot of rules involved if you want to enjoy that freedom. And I'm not just talking about legal restrictions and regulations. I'm talking about laws of physics. There's lift, thrust, the pitch, the yaw. There's angles of attack. That's a good analogy there. Angle of attack. I'm going to get off my path here and deviate a little bit so it's a little quieter. Sometimes people, and we'll call this flight life or spiritual goals. A lot of times people want to try to climb too steeply. They want to achieve the end goal too fast. And what happens is if your angle of attack is too steep for the amount of thrust that you have, you're going to stall. And if you stall, you're going to drop. And if you don't recover properly, you're going to crash. And how many people, unfortunately, do that? They find something good, they find something freeing, liberating, and whatever faith system that is, and they want to do well, they want to excel, they want to get to that end goal. And because it does require effort. You have to climb. You have to get up to a higher plane. But they stall. They're just either whatever the thrust was, whether it's personal conviction, which usually is not the case, or maybe knowledge, understanding, could be a level of development. There's all kinds of things that could be providing that thrust or expectations. Oh, that one is a slightly different one. But they can't sustain that attitude of vertical climb. Now the other thing that just popped into my head, it was the expectations. Sometimes when you're flying, and this has happened to me before, especially as little mighty 150 that I was in, little Cessna 150. 172 is a little bit heavier, but the 150 is pretty much like a flying kite. You get a little bit of turbulence and you're bounced all over the place. Sometimes our expectations are like the skies that we want to fly in. You know, we prefer, it's called CAVU, ceiling and visibility unlimited. And maybe it is a beautiful day, but then the winds pick up. And when the winds pick up, sometimes we get blown off course or we bounce around. And the winds could be opposition, it could be public opinion. The winds and the turbulence could be our lack of understanding of what might be actually needed or required to achieve. We might have to, and if we don't know how to adjust our course and tack with the wind, then it makes it much more difficult to get where we want to be. So the faith crisis issue is a big one. I've got a very good friend back home. Good morning.
Are you sharing your walk with somebody else?
Yes, sir.
Good.
I've got a very good friend back home who's a really strong Baptist, and he was a deacon in his church, but because he was divorced and remarried with his faith community, he is no longer allowed to be a deacon, although he can teach Sunday school and things like that. And that's been hard on him. But he's a good man, and he's been working diligently to try to help others have a good life and to achieve that destination of exaltation. We all have struggles. My hat's off to my sweetie. I'm out here working, but I've got the easy side of it. She has the responsibility of the house and the kids, and the yard work and all that stuff. So it's quite a heavy burden to bear. And I'm pretty grateful for her strength. And we each have different roles to play. Anyway, I think I'm going to sign off and finish my walk. Again, if you're having a crisis of faith, oh, you know what? I do need to include this. I'm sorry, it's going to take a little bit longer. A lot of it, another portion or another reason why unfortunately so many people have a crisis of faith is a misunderstanding about what is written in the book of Matthew in the New Testament of the Bible. Matthew 5:48, be ye therefore perfect, even as Father in heaven is perfect. Maybe not an exact quote, but a lot of people misunderstand that. It comes on the heels of the Sermon on the Mount, and I have some questions about the translation of that also in the King James Version. I'm not real familiar with a lot of the other translations of the Bible, but the King James Version, I have some concerns about some of the wording translation, but the basis of it, if you read through it in context, is be kind, be forgiving, be charitable, be loving, as your Father in heaven is. And that, a lot of people want to make this term of perfection, to be something that it's not. The only being that I'm aware of that's perfect is God the Father. And I'm not going to get into discussion of how I conceptualize the Godhead, but we're mortals. We're not divine beings. Do we have the potential? Yes. That was a lot of Christ's ministry dealt with the capacity that we have to become like Him and to be with Him and God and enjoying joint custody, if you will, of the glories of heaven. But don't make the sense of perfection something that it's not. It doesn't mean to have, perfectly coiffed hair or to have the perfect bank account. Although investments are great. I like investments. It doesn't mean to have the perfect body, which I'm not sure if you can see it, but with legs like these, I don't think RuPaul would let me on the show. So there's just a lot of things that go into it that, we think we have to have, the kids have to all have straight A's in school and to get their, at a minimum, a master's degree, preferably a doctorate, so they can become whatever, or business owners. We're not all wired the same. Anyway, that was just my 2 cents worth. Don't stress out too much. Don't put self-imposed expectations and barriers on yourself that are above and beyond what God has asked of us. That's one of the things that I kind of see also, is how there's what we would call commandments. It's a set of expectations or rules that have been delivered to us so we can achieve our goal, so we can get to our destination safely. And a lot of people think it's necessary to out-deify God. if we're asked to share of our time and our means to help other people, some people think that they need to give more than is expected. You know, they'll sacrifice their families in order to help the stranger. You need to do both. You need to help both. Your primary responsibility is your family. Let's say we're asked to fast occasionally in order to share that food or that monetary equivalent to the food with your faith organization in order to help those who do not have food. It doesn't mean you empty out your bank account and give it all at one time to help those. Or tithing is another one. We're asked to give 10% of our increase. And some people will take that to mean they have to give everything. And there may come a point for that. You know, I'm not opposed. May not be capable, but I'm not opposed to what in my faith community we would call the United Order. So I'm not sure I'm emotionally or spiritually prepared for that yet, but I'm not opposed to it. It doesn't mean we're asked to do that now. We're asked to give 10% of our increase. So, or to serve in some kind of volunteer capacity with your faith organization. Some people think that you should do away with your career in order to devote full time to building your organization. Maybe you'll be asked to do that. But that's a different thing than making these self-imposed expectations. And the downside of that is frequently when we have these personal expectations, we project those onto other people. And we start developing pride because we are doing so well. We are going above and beyond what God has asked us to do. And we therefore start to expect other people to be as we are. And pride gets in the way, and we start saying, that person over there may be drinking some alcohol occasionally, or that person over there maybe is not devoting nearly enough time to service in the kingdom. So be really careful about that. We're all at different spots on the journey. We all have different strengths, different weaknesses. And as I've said before, true humility is knowing both your strengths and your weaknesses. So you can leverage your strengths, improve on your weaknesses, and become better. Anyway, I'm going to call it for now. Wow, just looking at the timer on that, it's almost 30 minutes. My apologies. Not really. I wanted to share this, especially for my family and for my friends and whomever else is tuned in. I love you. I am grateful that you're spending time with Dad. And it's my way of staying in touch while I'm out working away out of state. Anyway, that's it for now. You have a wonderful day, and thank you for spending time with Dad. Bye-bye.